Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really excited about today's talk because we're going to be talking about not your ordinary vampire story. Now, if you're a person who loves, vampire movies, vampire books, which I'm fascinated by them myself, I'm really excited to talk to today's guest, Anna Walner, and we're going to be talking about her recent released book called Garkain. Then we're also talk about her next book coming up in the series called Larugo, but talking about vampires. And, I'm excited about it because I'm kind of giggling because, vampires, are they real? I don't know. But Anna's going to tell us a little bit about her story and how you can see how it's possible that they are real. And did I kind of get that a little bit right, Anna?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Linda, for having me on the show. By the way, first and foremost, yeah, my sole intention was to create this world that readers could really immerse themselves in and see these characters as believable and not your ordinary vampire, as you said.
I love it because you mentioned before we got going here, you mentioned how the typical vampire is pictured as the white faced, can't go out at night, like they have like let me see, do you have any fangs? No fangs. Okay, she has no
No.
fangs. Okay, but like that's the typical story of the vampire. You can kill them with a cross or something like that, or a silver bullet. No, that's a werewolf.
That's
But but so your story though is completely like taken totally aside from that. And so I would love for you to share with us what you can share about it. And then I want to let everybody know that you can find a copy of her book at annajwalner.com. Go ahead and get it there. And then tell us about the success you've had because you just released it in July, because we're in August now. Released it in July, and tell us about the success you had. I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, no, it released actually in June, at the end of June. And then it was the number one Nook bestseller for nearly the entire first week that it was out on Amazon. So that was quite an achievement. I was very proud of that. And then also, so the book itself, I wanted to do something. They say that have if you want to read the book, or if you can't find the book that you want to read, then you need to write it. And that really was the case with Garkain because I love paranormal romance, and I've always loved reading stories of vampires and shifters. And I couldn't find exactly what I was looking for. I came across the same tropes and the same scenarios. And in YA paranormal romance, you're most oftentimes taken back to high school, and then you have this. It's kind of a formula that's usually followed. And I said, I'm going to throw that completely out the window and take my own adoption story and give it to the main character, Amelia, and let her go on this wild journey where she reconnects with her biological family and discovers that they are nothing like what she thought they would be. She'll agree to things she never thought she would, become something she never believed existed, and find a life worth dying for in the process.
Oh my gosh. It sounds so cool. And just like you said, a lot of those stories, they take you back to the younger years. And it's to think that there might actually be vampires walking this earth. And there's a lot of different films out there and books out there that kind of allude to that, like the zombie movies, right? For example,
Right.
they make us think that it could be possible that that could happen. And so, if you could walk us through a little bit, like the parallels, because you said, you titled the character, Amelia, after kind of about after your story. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story? I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so I was adopted from hospital in Houston in 1981. I'm gonna go ahead and tell my age there, and but I did not, as Amelia did, go through the foster care system. I did, however, take the DNA test a couple of years ago and reconnect with my biological family as well, just as she did. And but growing up as an adoptee, you always wonder the whys behind, you know,
Mm.
everything, and imagine these amazing scenarios in your head that you were given up for adoption because you were, the love child of Rod Stewart and Nicole Kidman or something like that, or one day you'll be called home and you're a princess or something like that. But so I said, let's just take this really wild and give Amelia this story where she finds out she's a part of this secret society and she's brought home for a purpose and to live her life as a normal human without any knowledge of this secret society, to observe how she would grow up and then bring her back home when it was time. And so that's where that's the origin of the story.
Wow. So how did you choose? Because you chose like the outback of Australia, right? So how did you choose that? I mean, have you been there before, or what? How? That's
I've
interesting.
not,
You've never
I've
not
not,
been there.
I've not yet been there. But the only thing that I do know is that my father's is of Australian descent. So I do have that heritage of that Australian heritage, and that's the only thing that I know of my paternal biological side. I know about my maternal biological side, but I don't know anything about the paternal side other than he was from Australia. So I've always been fascinated with the country and with culture. And so when it came time to set a locale, I knew that I had to take it there.
So when are you going to travel there? Are you going to?
I would love to, but I have a 2-year-old, and the flight is something like 48 hours. And
Right, with all the stopovers and all that. Yeah.
yes, so it will most likely be a little while yet
Yeah.
before we get to do that. But it is on my bucket list. Yes.
That's awesome. I've been to Australia. I went there in the year 2000 for the Olympics,
Wow.
and it was just so, such a great place, so beautiful where we were staying. We weren't in town or anything, but it's a really beautiful place. So yeah, hoping you get a chance to get out there, sooner rather than later, just so you get to see, the area that you wrote about. So what kind of research did you do on Australia for the book? And like, how did you, because again, you chose Australia because your father, right? But
Right.
how did you decide, like, what part, like the outback, what does it look like? And I'm just curious because as a writer, how do you come up with all this information to put into a book so that people aren't like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about? You know what I mean?
Well, the landscape of Australia was just I've always been fascinated with the country itself. So growing up, I devoured anything of an Australian nature. So if I could find it in the library and it was a picture book of Australia, then I was on it. I was checking it out. If it was something about Aboriginal culture, then I was checking that out. So I've always been fascinated with Australia. So a lot of that is from just absorbing all of the information that I could whenever I was younger, because it's the only piece of the puzzle that I had growing up. And then, of course, now you have the internet and you can do all kinds of different research and even go to street level and look around Perth, which is where part of the story is set at the very beginning, where she meets her biological mother for the first time. So it's very beneficial to be able to use tools like that now. I have much respect for authors back in the day who did not have that capability to use all of the things that we have now at our disposal.
That's true. It's a good point because the internet is our friend. Like Google is my friend, right? It's like one of my
Oh,
best friends.
absolutely.
Google everything. Hey Google. Or now it's what's that, Alexa or whatever. I don't have that Alexa myself, but I know everybody's talking to that person.
Yeah.
Alexa, do this. And I'm curious, when you finally, met your birth family, what was that like? And
It was
how old were you? You said it was just a couple of years ago. You don't have to tell me the age, but it was just a couple of years ago, right? And so you were older. Did you have your daughter yet already, your child, or?
I was pregnant at the time. So that was really the driving force behind taking the DNA test, was to get some sort of, because growing up, every time that you go to the not the hospital, but the doctor, you have to write in big letters, adopted on your questionnaire that says family history. And I wanted to know not just for me, but for my daughter. Because if I needed to be tested for the BRCA gene, or she did, then we wanted to get that done. If there was a history of female-specific cancer in the family, then I wanted to know about that. Heart disease, same thing. So having that information to pass on to her, I didn't want her to have the same issues that I did growing up.
Yeah, yeah, I can't imagine. Unfortunately, I didn't have a situation like that. But so then you do these tests, you find them, and then what?
I actually found out that my biological mother lives about an hour or so away from me.
What?
And I know, so it was that was very interesting. We've yet to meet. However, I
Okay.
did meet my half sister Michelle over the summer. I want to say I'd have to look at the pictures, but we did meet, and it was awesome. Her son was there as well, so it's just amazing how much we have in common, how much nature and nature and nurture are so your nature is so prevalent because we had so much in common once we started talking. And I put that in the book before I had ever even met Michelle. There is a Michelle in the book who is Amelia's sister. And
What? That's it could have been
so
any name, and you chose the same name. Like, where did the name come from? Like, did it just come out of the sky, and did you have a best friend that was named Michelle? I mean, how did you pick the name?
no, it was after I changed the name actually
Oh,
after
oh, gotcha.
I found out. Yes. So that was one of those
Okay.
last minute changes before it went to press.
That's awesome. I love it. And it's interesting. What was the name before Michelle? Do you remember?
I don't know. I think it was Nicole.
Nicole, that's close.
I
That's
think
close.
so.
So it's interesting when you're coming up with a story like this because you're incorporating some real life to some fantasy, right? And what was the genre that you called it?
Paranormal Romance. So it falls under the YA fantasy umbrella, and more specifically, shifter, paranormal romance, vampire teen romance. So there are a lot of subgenres under the fantasy umbrella. So mine falls under paranormal romance most specifically.
Okay, now do you yourself believe in vampires?
I believe that there is a kernel of truth behind every mythos, whether or not it is true or whether it was believed to be true at the time, it still remains prevalent to this day for a reason. So it has stood the test of time. Vampires, lycanthrope, um, you know, so many different things that have stood the test of time that had to have originated from somewhere. So I am open to the possibility of everything. I'm fascinated with supernatural and with the unknown.
Have you always been that way, or is this something that's been more recent?
Oh no, absolutely. Growing up, reading, all kinds of things, I just thought, there's the possibility for everything out there. And then, you hear ghost stories growing up, and I was not scared. I was more curious about them than I was anything else. I wanted to stay in the haunted hotels whenever we went on vacation,
Yeah.
and so I'm intrigued with the supernatural. I think it's very curious.
So have you stayed at haunted hotels?
I have. I've stayed at the Tarpon
Oh my
Inn in Port
gosh.
Aransas, Texas. I've also stayed at the Galvez, the Hotel Galvez in Galveston, Texas.
Hmm.
So
And did you see any ghosts or did you
I
miss them
will
that day?
I will have to say that there is a palpable presence in the Roosevelt Room at the Tarpon Inn in Port Aransas, Texas. You can feel the air is different once you walk into that room. I can't.
Wow. Mm.
It's unexplainable. It's almost like an energy type thing that you can just. It was undeniably noticeable for me.
Okay, so different, not like they were blowing in some air conditioning in that one area or anything. It wasn't like that, right?
Right.
It was like you could feel like there was an energy that you could feel. Is that what you're saying?
It just felt different whenever you walked through the threshold of that room. There was an instant sensation of maybe the air was denser, or just it just felt
Oh.
different. You would have to experience it. I can't necessarily explain exactly what it felt like, but it is the Roosevelt Room at the Tarpon Inn in Port Aransas, Texas.
Did it freak you out or were you like, this is cool?
No, I was like, this is cool. Like, this
That's
is really
awesome.
cool. Oh,
I have a like my closest to a somewhat ghost story that I have is after my mom passed away. Well, before my mom passed away, my parents and my husband and I would watch Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy almost every night. And we did it for years, because we would go to my parents' house and watch these programs with them. And
right.
after my mom passed away, it was about a week later. I was walking through the living room and the TV, I kid you not, the TV turned on and it was Jeopardy. I'm sorry, Wheel of Fortune, Wheel of Fortune. And I thought, oh, it must have been on already. And I just excused it, right. It must have already been on. And I just didn't notice it when I walked in there. And so I turned it off, didn't think anything of it. About a week or 2 weeks later, it happened again. And I was like, this is kind of weird. And then the third time it happened, which was about a month later, the third time it happened again, I mean, like there was Jeopardy. He wasn't Jeopardy. It was Wheel of Fortune, my mom's favorite show. And it happened again. And I was like, okay,
Wow.
mom, I know you're here messing with
So
me.
cool.
Everything's okay. You can go ahead and leave
That's so
now
cool.
because it just freaked me out. And so I got on a radio program, like they were doing this paranormal show, and the lady said, "You anybody had an experience they want to, talk about?" And so I called in and I told her about that experience. And do you have any idea what her first question was to me? Now remember, it was Wheel of Fortune that came on every time.
Who was it that has recently passed in your life?
Well, I told her that was my mom, but so her question was, what were the puzzles?
Oh,
It's
oh,
like, oh my gosh, I didn't look because it's possible that,
there was a message that you missed.
because why
Oh,
else would she, like, why else would it come
cool.
on while I'm walking through the living room? I mean, it was just so freaky. And
See?
I almost wish I hadn't told her to leave because there hasn't been any noticeable signs of her being back ever since I said everything's okay, you can leave now, because it just freaked me out. But I kind of wonder, like, if I hadn't said that, if it would have happened again, what would the puzzles have been on? Like,
Oh,
go to
wow.
the Caribbean, or something like that. Okay, I'd be okay with that. You need a new car. I don't know. But anyway, that was the only knock on wood. That's the only one I've encountered, at least to date, and that was already freaky enough for me. And but this is fascinating though. You're doing this. Well, let's talk about the next book because you have what's the one that you have out right now, Garkain, and
Mm-hmm.
then you have La Rouge. Is that how you
Larugo.
pronounce Larugo? Larugo. Tell us a little bit about that one because that one's coming out November 2nd.
It is. It's available for pre-order now. All books are available wide, so Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere that you can find or buy a book, you will find my books. But it is. It takes up right where so Garkain leaves off with some pretty big questions. It leaves readers with a bit of this secret knowledge right at the end of the right at the end of Garkain. And so a little behind the scenes that Amelia isn't necessarily aware of and the audience isn't aware of until they get to that ending. So I leave you with a lot of questions. So I make sure to follow through on those promises and pick up exactly where Garkain left off with Larugo. And it's a more in-depth look. So the first book is more character-centric. It focuses on the cast of characters and really getting to know who they are. Because as a reader myself, I find that if I'm invested in the characters and their story, I'm more likely to follow them through whatever it is that they are being put through, whatever trials they have to face. So I don't focus that much on world building in the first book. It's more character building in the second book, we take a closer look at the colony and the politics behind the scenes and how all of that will change. There are also some pretty crazy surprises along the way. So I've sent it out already for some ARC readers, and I have gotten some pretty amazing feedback already.
That's so cool. I love, how do you like how do you keep track? I know there's such things as storyboards and all these different I don't write okay, how do you keep track of all your people?
I,
That's just
I'm they are all in here.
no
Uh,
way.
yes. So everyone is so unique and distinct, and I was really careful in creating the character development. The first book took a lot longer than any of the others in the series because it's really about building those specific personalities and creating color to their characteristics. I mean, even the phrases that one character will say is completely unique to them. So you're very invested in each individual character, and sometimes the characters that are secondary or even tertiary move up as the book continues because they will surprise me. But yeah, they're so unique that I don't really write anything down. They're in here. They become
What do you
almost
mean
like friends.
what do you mean they'll surprise you? I mean, you're writing the book. How can they surprise you?
I know.
I'm curious about that.
Being a
Do you have
pantser,
dreams about these people? Okay.
they
Of
do
what?
sometimes keep me up at night, but only whenever
Oh my God.
whenever
Okay.
the thoughts won't stop, and that's whenever I'm writing that creative wave, and in the middle of putting everything down on the laptop for the rough draft. But I will be writing, and then all of a sudden, I say, "Oh, what do I do here?" And then, Michelle says something, and I'm like, "This is an opportunity. Should I take this fork in the road or should I not?" And then, so they kind of give me options. And then if I take that fork, then I have to write something completely different from where I was going in the beginning. But it's a sidestep, and it's a different level of the plot. And so they do surprise me sometimes whenever I'm writing because as I come across the dialogue, then I do practice the dialogue out loud, and sometimes it's not quite right. So hi, Brooke. So I will
Yeah.
redo the dialogue, and then something pops up, and I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. We need to go with that, and the story changes a little bit, and I love that. As an author who is a pantser, I'm surprised as much as the reader is, and I think that's one of the great things about Garkain and the entire Uluru Legacy series is that there are a lot of surprising moments that surprised me, and I think that really comes through in the books.
Well, how often do you so we've got Brooke, we got Brooke, Brooke, we've got Alice. Ella, she says character development is really important to me too. And so, but I'm curious here, how often would you say if you were to kind of get a percentage of it, what percentage of the time do you take the different fork in the road as opposed to, you know what, I don't think I can develop that as well. I'm going to continue down the same path. What percentage? Because you're something inspired you to think about that
Yeah.
new fork in the road, right? So,
I think it through. So if it doesn't fit, so I know where the story needs to end, what conclusion it needs to come to in order to wrap up this segment of the legacy or this book. And so if it doesn't fit well into the character arc or the story arc, then I do discard it. But I do think it through and see how it could possibly be turned into something. If I can't do anything with it, then I discard it.
okay. Okay. So it's just like entrepreneurship. If it's not
Jim,
working,
Jim is
stop
giving
doing.
me a hard time.
Oh, I didn't
You're
even see this.
scared.
Tell the truth, Anna. Your characters take over just like mine do. There you go,
I
Jim.
know. I
You have to
totally
give your
agree.
characters breath and room to grow, right? Just
Yeah,
like human
they do.
beings, because even though it's in your mind, this storyline that you every single day in your life, you're meeting different people, hearing different things that help to expand your own mind, right? And then you put it down on paper, and
Yeah.
help to develop your people. So that's really
I
awesome. I love it.
confess, Jim, you're right. They totally take over.
They're talking to me right now. Who's talking to me right now? Is it Amelia? Is it Michelle? Who is it? I don't know, but it doesn't really matter because it's still great information. Well, thanks, Anna. I want to thank you as we are running out of time here. Gosh, the time
Oh
flew
wow.
by. I
Did.
really I love what you're doing. I love the stories. And before we went live, I said, are you going to make a movie? Because I can totally see these, being great movies, or even maybe like a Netflix series kind of where the first book is a series of 12 and the second book is a series of 12. So anybody out there that likes to write about vampires, vampire stories, and this kind of thing, go ahead and reach out to Anna, make it happen. I mean, I'm there. I'll be watching for sure. So go share with us a little bit about how can we contact you? I see we have it on the screen, annajwalner.com. Go to that/Garkain to buy that book. But then also, what else are you up to? You have this next book coming
Oh
out,
gosh.
Rugo. Did
I
I say
am
it right?
on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and then you can always check my website for updates as well. But I'm very active on all social media sites. So if you would love to give me a follow, I'm pretty good about following back and also interacting. So if you've got a question, you can ask it there, or I will respond to a comment on any one of my videos or posts.
Awesome. And are you on Clubhouse as well?
I'm not. I'm not on Clubhouse. I've yet to delve into that. I'm on so many different social
Okay.
media sites. Just adding one
Okay.
more right now might topple the whole deck of cards. I don't know.
I know, I hear you. I was the same way, and I got over there, and it was one of the smartest decisions I've ever made in all of my working on social media, which has been 13 years. So
Wow.
I'll just put that little bug in
Okay.
your ear, and
All
I'll leave
right.
a cliffhanger. Just I can't believe you left a cliffhanger in your book. I guess you're supposed to do that, right? To make them come back to the next one, entice them to come back.
Yeah, I'm bad about that. But I'm also a firm believer that, just like Jim said that the characters do take over, the story also ends where it needs to end. So
Mm,
so although I would have liked for the first book to have been a little bit longer, it ended precisely where it needed to end. So the second book is a lot longer because there's a lot more going on. The third and the fourth as well. But the stories just end where they end. I'm sorry, guys. It's just how it goes.
that's the way it goes. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for being here and
Thank
sharing,
you for
your
having me.
journey of, of writing your stories and sharing them with the world because, providing that
Absolutely.
type of release for people to be able to, hear different types of stories, especially like it's not the same old thing.
No, it's
And
not.
I'm excited to get my copy going to annajwalner.com/Garkain. Everybody have a great day. Anna, thank you so much for being here and
Thank you for having
keep
me.
nice and cool there in Texas.
Doing my best. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in and share this out with your friends and family so they also can purchase these books because they're going to be amazing for them to, I don't know, just to tap into a different world. Have a great day, everybody. Bye bye now.